Before today's video starts, we want to bring you a word from our amazing sponsor, Untitled. With Valentine's Day just around the corner, why not get that special someone a really unique gift like a Untitled subscription? It's not just a thoughtful gift, you can play Untitled as an exciting Valentine's date night. Untitled is kind of like an escape room in a box and you're trying to solve a murder. The props are incredible and well thought out. It makes me feel like I'm on a TV show when I play it. The storyline is also fantastic, and it makes the game feel immersive. I'm currently playing a season of Hunt a Killer with my friends, and we're obsessed with it. We discuss the case we're investigating, even on days when we aren't playing. Hunt a Killer boxes are only $25, so it's a great deal, and much more inexpensive than going out. And right now, just for our viewers, you can go to huntakiller.com/criminallylisted and use the promo code criminallylisted for 20% off your first box. Once again, make sure you use the promo code criminallylisted to get a 20% discount, and you'll be showing your support for our channel. Now you just have to ask yourself, do you have what it takes to hunt a killer? Number 3. Philip Chism. In the fall of 2013, Colleen Ritzer was 24 years old. Ritzer was passionate about mathematics and she taught it at Danvers High School in Danvers, Massachusetts. Ritzer was a popular and dedicated teacher. In addition to teaching, she was also pursuing her master's degree. On the night of October 22, 2013, Ritzer did not come home. Around 11:20 p.m., she was reported missing. The police went to her school to search for her. In the second floor washroom, they found a large amount of blood. The police then searched the area around the school. In the woods behind the school, the police found the dead body of 24-year-old Colleen Ritzer. The police said her body had been posed sexually. She had been stabbed multiple times in the neck area. The pathologist would later determine she had been stabbed 16 times. She had also been sexually assaulted. The police noted that Ritzer was not the only person associated with Danvers High School who was reported missing that day. Earlier that afternoon, 14-year-old Philip Chism was reported missing when he didn't come home from school. Chism had just moved to Danvers from Clarksville, Tennessee with his mother, who had recently gone through a vicious divorce. The police found Chism walking along the side of a highway about an hour after Ritzer's body was found. The police looked in his backpack and they found a bloody box cutter. They also found some of Ritzer's possessions. Chism was brought in for questioning and he confessed to killing Ritzer. He said that Ritzer had asked him and another student to stay after class that day. Chism claimed that he attacked Ritzer because she had said a trigger word to him. The other student who had been asked to stay behind said that Ritzer had asked Chism about the differences between Danvers and Clarksville. The other student said that Chism became visibly upset and Ritzer changed the subject. At some point, Ritzer left the classroom and went to a nearby washroom. Chism followed her into the washroom and he said he hit her with a karate chop and this knocked her out. He then dragged the box cutter across her throat, but she didn't start bleeding. So he did it again, and this time she started bleeding. Chism was asked if he sexually assaulted her, and he said no. He claimed that the murder wasn't sexual. The police checked the school's CCTV footage, and they found the following footage. Ritzer is seen walking in the hallway towards the washroom, where the blood was later found. Chism steps out of the classroom and looks around. When he sees that no one is around, he pulls his hood up over his head and stalks towards the washroom. Then, just before he enters the women's washroom, he puts on gloves. Nearly half an hour later, he exits the washroom wearing a mask and he's pulling a plastic garbage bin. Then Chism is later seen without the mask, pulling the garbage bin through the hallway. In the garbage bin was Richard's body. The police learned that Chism brought the box cutter, a change of clothes, the mask, and the gloves with him to school that day. Phil Chism was charged with murder the day after Ritzer was killed. Chism went to trial in November 2015 when he was 16 years old. Even though he was 14 when he committed the crime, he was tried as an adult. The prosecution argued that Chism knew precisely what he was doing that day. He brought the murder weapon with him, along with the mask, the gloves, and a change of clothes. He followed her into the washroom, sexually assaulted her, and cut her throat. He then loaded her into the garbage bin and dragged the bin out to the woods. But Ritzer was not dead yet. After he got Ritzer out of the bin, he sexually assaulted her again and then stabbed her multiple times. Chism was found guilty of murder and 2 counts of sexual assault. In 2013, the Massachusetts Supreme Court ruled that people under the age of 18 could not be sentenced to life without parole. Chism was sentenced to life with a chance of parole after 25 years for the murder conviction. For the sexual assault convictions, he was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Colleen Ritzer's family criticized the sentencing and the ruling that minors could not be sentenced to life without parole. After Ritzer's senseless murder, her family set up a scholarship in her honor. To help fund the scholarship, they hold an annual 5K run, and thousands of people participate. Philip Chism will first be able to apply for parole in 2053 when he is 54 years old. Number 2. Christopher Simmons and Charles Benjamin. In September 1993, Shirley Crook was 46 years old. Shirley lived with her husband, Steve, in a mobile home just outside of Fenton, Missouri. Both Shirley and Steve worked as truckers. The couple had a son and a daughter who were both grown up, and they had both moved out. On the night of September 9th, 1993, Steve was away from their home because he was working. He returned home the next day and found Shirley missing. The home was in disarray, and Steve got the sense that Shirley didn't leave of her own volition. Steve called the police and reported Shirley missing. Shirley's description matched the description of a woman who was found dead hours earlier. Fishermen had found her body in the Merrimack River. Using fingerprints, the police determined that the body was 46-year-old Shirley Crook. Shirley had died a horrifying death. She was only wearing underwear and cowboy boots, and a towel was wrapped around her head. Under the towel, her head had been wrapped in duct tape so that her eyes and mouth were covered. Her wrists were bound behind her back with a dog leash, and then her ankles were wrapped up in electrical tape. Then the dog leash and the electrical tape were tied together with a belt from a bathrobe. Shirley had suffered several broken ribs. It's believed that, while Shirley was alive and tied up, she was thrown off a railroad trestle that was 40 feet above the water. The pathologist determined she had drowned. Shirley's van was found parked in a mobile home park across the road from her home. The police interviewed people who lived in the area where the van was parked. One person said that they saw 17-year-old Christopher Simmons near the van. That afternoon, the police picked up Simmons at his high school. At first, Simmons denied having anything to do with the murder. But after 90 minutes of questioning, he confessed. He said that he and two friends, 15-year-old Charles Benjamin and 16-year-old John Tesmer, planned on robbing the crook's home. They met that night, but Tesmer backed out and went home. Sometime between 1:30 and 2:30 a.m., Simmons and Benjamin broke into the crook's home. Shirley woke up and saw them. Simmons and Shirley knew each other. They lived less than a mile from each other, and they had previously been in a car accident. Simmons said to ensure she stayed quiet, they decided to kill her. They wrapped her mouth and eyes in duct tape, and then they tied her up. They loaded her into her own van and drove out to the state park. Simmons parked the van, and they got Shirley out. Her ankles were freed, and then they got her to put on cowboy boots so she could walk. They forced her to walk to the trestle, where they hogtied her. What exactly happened next is unclear. Either Simmons pushed Shirley into the water himself, or he and Benjamin tossed her into the river. After they threw her into the river, they abandoned her van at the mobile home park. They stole all the money that Shirley had in her purse, which was $6. Hours later, Simmons and Benjamin went to school and acted like nothing happened. After Simmons confessed, 15-year-old Charles Benjamin was arrested as well. They were both charged with first-degree murder. Benjamin went to trial first. In May 1994, he was convicted of first-degree murder. The 16-year-old was sentenced to life without parole. Christopher Simmons went to trial in June 1994. One witness who went to school with Simmons testified that he had heard Simmons talking about planning to kill someone. The witness said specifically Simmons wanted to tie someone up and throw them into the river. The witness testified that Simmons said that he would get away with it because he was a minor. The same witness testified that the morning after the murder, Simmons joked that he and Benjamin had drowned a woman. Simmons said, "Bubble, bubble," and then he laughed. Simmons' defense lawyer tried to show that Simmons was a good person who made a mistake. He pointed out that Simmons did not have a criminal record. Also, when Simmons was a child, he was physically and mentally abused by his stepfather. As a teenager, Simmons used drugs and drank hard liquor daily. A doctor testified that Simmons was mentally ill. But none of this helped his case. The jury deliberated for 5 hours and they found him guilty. They recommended the death penalty. In August 1994, a judge followed the jury's recommendation and sentenced Simmons, who was 18 at the time, to death. Simmons appealed his sentence, citing ineffectual counsel. His appeal said that his age caused him to act impulsively and that should have been brought up at the sentencing hearing. His appeal made it to the Missouri Supreme Court. In August 2003, the Missouri Supreme Court ruled to vacate Simmons' death sentence because of his age. He was subsequently sentenced to life without parole. The state of Missouri appealed the decision to have Simmons' death sentence overturned to the United States Supreme Court. The case was argued on June 13, 2004. The hearing resulted in a landmark decision. In a 5-4 decision, which was released in March 2005, the Supreme Court ruled that it was unconstitutional to execute someone who was 16 or 17 when they committed the crime. In 1888, the Supreme Court had already ruled that no one could be executed for a crime that they had committed when they were under the age of 16. Both Christopher Simmons and Charles Benjamin are still in prison. At the time of this video, Benjamin is 42 years old, and he is serving his sentence at the Eastern Reception Diagnostic Correctional Center in Bonne Terre, Missouri. Simmons, who is 43, is currently incarcerated at the Southeast Correctional Center in Charleston, Missouri. Number 1. Sheila, Eddy, and Rachel Shoaf. In the summer of 2012, Skylar Neese was 16 years old. She was an only child, and she lived with her parents, Dave and Mary, in Star City, West Virginia. Her mother worked as an administrative assistant, and her father was a product assembler at Walmart. Skylar was an honors student at school, and she planned on going to university. She wanted to become a criminal lawyer. Besides attending school, Skylar also worked part-time at Wendy's. On July 6, 2012, Skylar went to work, and then she returned to the apartment that she shared with her parents. Her parents went to work the next morning, and Skylar's bedroom door was closed. That afternoon, her father returned home and found her bedroom door still closed and locked. He checked the outside of the apartment building, and he found her bedroom window open. Her father could tell she had snuck out the night before. In her bedroom, he found her cell phone. To her father, this meant that she had only planned on going out on a short excursion and she had planned to return home. Skylar was reported missing, but the police thought that she ran away. So they did not do much in the way of investigating her disappearance. They did look at the CCTV footage from Skylar's apartment building. It shows Skylar climbing out of her bedroom window. She then goes across the road and gets into a sedan, and then the car drives off. The police were able to determine that the car belonged to 16-year-old Sheila Eddy. Just before she went missing, Skylar had been exchanging text messages with Eddy. Eddy attended the same high school as Skylar. They had been good friends in grade school, but in high school, they drifted apart. In high school, Eddy started to spend more time with a girl named Rachel Shoaf. Eddy was interviewed, and she said that Skylar came out with her and Rachel Shoaf, who was also 16. Eddy said that they drove around and smoked some marijuana. Eddy said she dropped Skylar off a short distance from her apartment a few hours later. Eddy said she didn't know what happened to Skylar. Rachel Shoaf was also interviewed, and she confirmed what Eddy had said. Several people thought that their story was odd. It appeared that in the 2 days before Skylar went missing, she was mad at her friends. In one tweet, she wrote, "It really doesn't take much to be off." Another tweet reads, "Sick of being at home. Thanks friends, love hanging out with you all too." A tweet from the day before she went missing reads, "You doing like that is why I can never completely trust you." 2 months after Skylar went missing, the West Virginia State Police and the FBI got involved in the investigation. But in the first several months of their investigation, they could not locate Skylar, and they didn't find out who may have been responsible for her disappearance. David and Mary Neese went through Christmas without knowing what happened to their only child. In the months after Skylar went missing, rumors began swirling around her high school. The most predominant rumor was that on the night Skylar disappeared, she was hanging out with Sheila, Eddy, and Rachel Shoaf. They were doing drugs, and Skylar overdosed. So that they wouldn't get in trouble, Eddy and Shoaf hid her body. Where Skylar overdosed somewhere isolated, and the girls just left her there. While Skylar was missing, Sheila Eddy was active on Twitter. On the day after Skylar went missing, Eddy posted a tweet wishing another friend a happy birthday. Most of Eddy's tweets were mundane American teenage girl tweets. One thing that the FBI noted was that Skylar and Eddy were supposedly good friends, but Eddy rarely mentioned Skylar's disappearance in any of her tweets. Eddy did mention Rachel Shoaf quite a bit though. On November 5th, 4 months after Skylar went missing, Eddy tweeted, "No one on this earth can handle me and Rachel. If you think you can, you're wrong." Just after Christmas, the FBI asked both Eddy and Shoaf to come in and take a polygraph exam. Eddy took the polygraph exam. Shoaf did not take the exam. As she was on her way to take the test, she had a mental breakdown. She ended up being hospitalized at a psychiatric facility for 5 days. On January 3rd, 2013, after Shoaf was released from the hospital, she went to the office of her attorney. In her lawyer's office, there was also an investigator with the West Virginia State Police and an FBI agent. Shoaf sat down for the polygraph exam, and she was asked if Skylar had overdosed or choked to death. Shoaf answered no to both questions. Then Shoaf said, "We stabbed her." Everyone in the room was shocked by the revelation. Shoaf explained that for months, she and Sheila Eddy had planned to kill Skylar. On June 10, 2012, they started to develop firm plans on how to do it and get away with it. Less than a month later, they put their plan into motion. Shoaf explained that she and Eddy had lured Skylar out of her home that night. They told her they were going to smoke some marijuana. They ended up just over the Pennsylvania state line near the small town of Brave. Eddy parked the car, all 3 girls got out, and they walked a few feet away from the car. Eddy tried to light the joint, but her lighter didn't work. Skylar said she had a lighter, but it was in the car. She turned and started to walk back to the car. Shoaf said she counted to 3, and then she and Eddy pulled out kitchen knives that Eddy had taken from her kitchen. Then they started stabbing Skylar. Skylar tried to fight them off. Skylar had managed to steal Shoaf's knife, and she cut Shoaf on one of her legs. Shoaf showed the scar to her lawyer and the 2 investigators. Shoaf said that once Skylar stopped moving, she and Eddy stood over her and watched her die. Then they dragged her body down to a nearby creek. They had brought a shovel with them, and they planned on burying the body. But the soil was too hard. so they covered Skylar's body with rocks, some dirt, and some brush. Then they went back to Eddy's car. They had brought handy wipes, paper towels, and a change of clothes with them. They both got out of their dirty clothes and wiped themselves off. Shoaf said that she and Eddy were high on adrenaline and they had sex. Then they put all the knives and bloody clothes into a garbage bag. Finally, they put on their clean clothes and drove away. Shoaf said that Eddy dropped her off at home and she went to bed. Shoaf said that Eddy got rid of the garbage bag with the bloody items. Shoaf was asked why they did it, and she said they didn't like Skylar anymore. Shoaf also said that she and Eddy didn't want to be friends with Skylar anymore. After confessing, Skylar took the investigators to the area where Skylar's body was hidden. The area was covered in snow, and Shoaf couldn't remember precisely where they hid Skylar's body. Because of the snow, the police couldn't properly search the area and excavate a body. They had to wait for the snow to melt a bit. While all this was going on, Sheila Eddy was carrying on with life. 5 days after Shoaf confessed, Eddy tweeted, "Staying home on Tuesday is the best because Law and Order SVU is on all day." On January 13, 2013, nearly 2 weeks after Rachel Shoaf confessed, the police went back to the area. Several minutes after the search began, the body of a teenage girl was found. Because of the level of decomposition, the remains could not be identified right away, but the police were sure that they had found the body of 16-year-old Skylar Neese. She had been missing for about 6 months. Just over 2 months later, on March 13th, the police announced that the remains of Skylar had been located. After the announcement, Sheila Eddy posted a tweet which reads, "Worst day of my whole life." Less than half an hour later, she posted a tweet that features 3 photographs of her and Skylar. The tweet reads, "Rest easy, Skylar. You'll always be my best friend. I miss you more than you could ever know." A month later, Sheila Eddy was arrested and charged with murder. Just before Eddy was arrested, she tweeted, "We really did go on 3. This tweet alludes to the fact that she and Shoaf attacked Skylar on the count of 3. In January 2014, 8 months after she was arrested, Sheila Eddy pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. She was given a life sentence. She'll be able to apply for parole after 15 years when she's 33 years old. Rachel Shoaf agreed to a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, and in February 2014, she was sentenced to 30 years of prison. She'll be able to apply for parole in 2023, a month before she turns 27. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Hopefully you found it interesting. If you did, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos just like it. Please check out our website, criminallylisted.com, where you can suggest cases, buy merch, and find out about an exclusive podcast. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/criminallylisted. But that is all for today. Thanks again for watching.